Joshua Myers here, and welcome back to my Evil Dead franchise review series. And today we are continuing on with the third installment of the original Evil Dead trilogy, and that is Army of Darkness from 1993.
Ash took a weekend trip through time.
To the pit with him!
He was trapped.
Hey! Look out!
Swept.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
And kidnapped. But they couldn't make him join
How do you stop it?
the Army of Darkness. From the director of Darkman comes Army of Darkness. Rated R. Starts Friday, February 19th at theaters everywhere.
Army of Darkness stars Bruce Campbell, Ivan Raimi, Ted Raimi, Marcus Gilbert, Bridget Fonda, Richard Grove, Ian Abercrombie, Brad Bradbury, Bill Moseley, and it's directed by Sam Raimi. The plot of Army of Darkness is that, forced to lead a makeshift Dark Ages army against the demonic Deadites, who possesses all the deadly magic of hell. The shotgun-toting, chainsaw-armed, reluctant, 20th century of time-traveling hero, Ash, must save the living from the dead, rescue his medieval girlfriend, and get back to his own time. Now, before I get into this review, I would like to say is that I have reviewed Army of Darkness before over on my main channel years ago. It was actually the first Evil Dead movie I reviewed. Not the first one I seen though. The first Evil Dead movie I ever watched was the 2013 remake. And also too, I have a Movie Night Madness episode where my friend Josh and I, again, it was borrowed over from my main channel, where we watched Army of Darkness. It was his first time watching it. So, and so I do have a history with this movie, and especially on my original channel. So, one of the things I wanted to do is revisit the film and try to get a bit more in-depth thoughts on the film, you know. And again, like I said, just like with a lot of my re-reviews, is that, you know, I have better equipment now. I'm in a different location, a much better location, if you ask me. So, yeah, let's move on to my thoughts of Army of Darkness. I really dig this film. Now, I dig it because it's just a good story, honestly. Yes, it's kind of a bit of a generic story, but, you know, it does it so well. I like the medieval setting. Honestly, when you're watching the Evil Dead movies, because the first one is clearly a horror film, the second one, it's almost a remake. Like, Sam Raimi almost did a remake of his original film, and, you know, blended in a comedy with the horror. And at a certain point, because of the fact that Sam Raimi essentially remade the original Evil Dead with his second movie, it starts to get a bit tired after a while. So when you get to this entry, it's like almost like a breath of fresh air, because they do break the formula. This is more of an adventure, like fantasy adventure film with some elements of slapstick comedy, and yeah, that's the tone that this film's going for. In fact, that is why this film is not called Evil Dead 3, it's called Army of Darkness, because Sam Raimi from Like a Gabber wanted to distinguish this from the other films. So, like, if you come across Army of Darkness, you don't have to necessarily have watched the first two Evil Dead movies, really, in order to watch the third one, you know. And I like it when a sequel could do that sometimes, you know. Again, it's especially if it's done well, could bring a breath of fresh air, you know, because most of the Evil Dead movies are essentially horror movies. Okay, so you got the original Evil Dead, that's straight up horror. Evil Dead 2, that's essentially a remake of the original Evil Dead, mixed in with, you know, some comedy. Army of Darkness is time travel story that takes place during medieval times, and is more of a fantasy adventure film with some very slapstick type comedy. And then you get to the 2013 remake, which is just straight up horror again, no comedy, nothing like that. And it is a remake. It tries to do something different, new characters. And then you get to the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead, which I've only seen the first season of, but from what I saw, is very much tried to go back to the horror roots while still throwing in that element of comedy. And yeah, so for the most part, the Evil Dead movies are either straight up horror or horror comedies. And this one, it does a completely different vibe to it. It does a different, completely different feel from, like, completely different tone from all the other Evil Dead movies. So it's like when you're watching them, it's kind of a breath of fresh air. And I really dig that. And I think Sam Raimi did an awesome job with this movie in regards to all that. And again, like I said, I love the story, and I love how certain characters, especially Ash, goes on a character arc. He has a character arc from the beginning of the film all the way to the end of the film. And let's talk about that too. Let's talk about the characters, because I really dig the characters here. Let's get the big one out of the way. Ash, played by Bruce Campbell. Again, he is a horror icon. He's one of the few horror icons that matches the iconic status of somebody like Michael Myers, Jason, Freddy. But he's not an antagonist. He's not a horror villain. He's a protagonist, a very selfish protagonist. But he is like the main hero of these movies. We don't have another horror protagonist that is up to the level of horror icon status as like Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason. Even Pinhead or Chucky, or all amount of those big name horror icons, and all of them are villains except for Ash. So sure, you got characters like Nancy Thompson in A Nightmare on Elm Street. You got Andy Barkley in Child's Play. You got Kirsty Cotton in Hellraiser. You got Laurie Strode in Halloween. You got not much in regards to, I guess the two I could think of for Friday the 13th that are the most popular protagonists is Jenny from Friday the 13th Part 2 and Tommy Jarvis from Friday the 13th Part 4, 5, and 6. You got all of those, but even then they don't match the iconic status of their villains. Because the first thing of what you think of when you think of Halloween, you think of Michael Myers first of all. When you think of Friday the 13th, you think of Jason. When you think of A Nightmare on Elm Street, you think of Freddy Krueger first. Those are the first things that come to mind. Not normally the protagonist. You don't think of Laurie Strode first. You don't think of Tommy Jarvis. You don't think of Nancy Thompson first. The first thing you think of is the villains. So again, like I said, we don't have a horror protagonist that really, could, it's as iconic as the movie's villain. And this is the one exception with Ash, because when you think of Evil Dead, what do you think of mostly? You think of Ash. That's the first thing that pops into your mind. And then the second thing is the Necronomicon, the Deadites, Sam Raimi, all that different stuff. So just tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, seriously. And yeah, so I really dug that. I really dig the characters. I dig all the side characters, I think some of them give some comedic moments, some heart. Also, too, another thing I dig is the pacing. This film clocks in at an hour and 21 minutes long, and feels like that. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Although I will say, it is a bit fast-paced for an hour and 21 minutes. But it's a good fast pace. Even though the effects could be a bit cheesy, I love the effects here. They utilize a lot of practical effects mostly, mixed with stop motion claymation stuff, with the skeleton army. And even though they use stop motion and sometimes people in suits and stuff like that, and you could tell that it still has its own kind of charm to it, because again, it's not trying to be a serious horror film. In fact, it's not trying to be a horror film in general. Honestly, this was trying to be a serious horror film like the first movie is, or the 2013 remake is. I probably would put this in my negatives, to be honest with the effects. But it's not. It's not trying to be a horror film. It's not trying to take itself seriously. And I really enjoy it. And I really like the effects. It has this, even though they're cheesy effects, it has this kind of unique charm to it. Just like the rest of the film. I like the effects from the Deadite skeleton army to, when there are those, little Ashes running about trying to get Ash and that, kind of like Gulliver's Travels type shit. Which, yeah, it's all very again, it has this unique kind of charm about it. Also, too, I really dug the music. The music in this film is composed by Joseph LaDuca, which, if you recognize that name at all, it's because he would later go on to compose the music for the last, for some of the parts of the Chucky franchise. He composed the music for Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, and is composing the music for the TV show Chucky, which is now on its second season. So Joseph LaDuca composed the music for Army of Darkness, and also he's composed the music for a few of the Evil Dead films. I think composed the music for Evil Dead 2, maybe the original Evil Dead. I think he also composed the music for the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead. So yeah, Joseph LaDuca has composed for both the Evil Dead music for both the Evil Dead franchise as well as the Chucky franchise. And I love the music here. And honestly, I could keep on going on with my positives, because honestly, we would be here all day. And to be frank, I can't think of any additional things I love about this film. And I don't have anything I'm rather mixed on, or anything I rather hate. So let's move on to my rating. So with that said, I'm going to give Army of Darkness a 5 out of 5 stars. I love this movie. This is, in fact, my favorite Evil Dead movie. Again, kind of, I guess, spoiled my ranking there, but at some point I will do a ranking of all the Evil Dead films, along with maybe do a ranking, like, in the ranking I would place the TV show in there. And also, too, there's going to be a new Evil Dead movie coming out next year called Evil Dead Rise, which I will be checking out and do my review of it, and add that to the ranking. I'll do the ranking probably when it comes out next year, so that you can see me rank all the Evil Dead films and then add the TV show in there too, which I have to get around to watching season 2 and season 3 soon. So that's it for this review. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.